Welcome to Global Citizen Life. Today on the podcast, we have Julie Leonard. Julie is an expat from Scotland, currently living in Munich, Germany for the last 9 years with her Italian husband and her 8-year-old son. She is the CEO of Julie Leonard Coaching, combining over 30 years of psychology, mental health, and coaching experience. Along with her coaching practice, she is the creator of the Intentional Happiness Circle and Simply Your Life coaching programs. And she's also author of the #1 bestseller, Intentional Happiness, the life-changing guide to being happy and staying happy. She's also the host of the weekly online International Women's Happy Club. Well, welcome to the show, Julie.
Hi, Sally. Lovely to be here.
So, tell us a little bit of how you went from Scotland to Germany.
Yeah. Well, I moved for a really nice reason. I moved for love, so that's always a nice one, isn't it? I didn't have to move. I chose to move. Um, yeah, I moved here, yeah, as you say, 9 years ago. Um, I was quite comfortable and quite happy in Scotland. Very good quality of life there, career, lovely house, great social life, all good. I guess the only thing that was missing was the partner, the husband that I was looking for. And gosh, in 2012, a friend asked me to go to a wedding with her in Romania. The groom was an Englishman living in Scotland, and she was really good friends with him, marrying a Romanian woman. And I said, yeah, I'll be your plus one. We'll make a holiday of it. I'll be your plus one. So I went to this wedding of people that I'd never met. And there I met this really nice Italian man who was living in Munich. So I met him and we spent about 5 days as a wedding party, touring Romania and hanging out. And part of our tour was to come back to Munich, and he was already living here. And so I met up with him a couple of times while we were traveling. And I thought, well, we'll give it the summer. Let's see what happens. Maybe I'll have a nice story of that summer. I used to go and visit the Italian in Munich. We'll see what happens. But it went really well. And I had a lot of flexibility in my job. I used to get a lot of time owed for all the work that I did. So I would come over every yeah, maybe once a month or something for a long weekend and visit him. And we started thinking about if we want to be together, where are we going to live? And I was kind of keen to leave the career that I had. I'd been working in nonprofit for a long time, and I was done. I was done with it all, looking for something different. As I say, never lived anywhere else. But he had a good job here. I liked the city when I came to visit, and I felt it was a good compromise, a good kind of place where we could be together. So after 18 months, I took the decision, or we took the decision, I would say, that I would move. And so that was big to pack up everything to I always struggle to say give up because I don't feel like I kind of sacrificed or gave up, but I did end a long career and a very stable and secure livelihood and living and family, friends, everything, which are very important to me, and moved to Munich. So yeah, I moved here January of 2014 and have been here ever since.
Nice. That's a great story. That's a great reason to go. And it sounded like the timing was good as well for you. And
Mm.
I would never use the word give up. I would just say you started a new chapter
Yeah,
because that's
yeah.
basically what it is. And the great thing that I love so much about being in Europe is all the countries are so close together. You can fly
Mhm.
and see people easily, and the long weekend trips are so normal here because, within 2 hours from any place within 2 hours, generally, you can get to a lot of different places. So even though they're distant relationships, they just seem to be a lot easier here than they would be, say, with me in Canada to get anywhere other than the United States. Even to hit the United States is probably at least a 2 hour flight from where I'm at. So
Yeah.
it does make it a lot easier, I think.
Definitely the fact that I could jump on a cheap Ryanair flight and come over in a couple of hours made it very possible for us to have that time together and get to know each other. So it was very easy. And being in Germany is you're right, feel like you're right in the center of Europe. And coming from Scotland, I was for a long time European, and I always felt like it was easy to travel. But it's even easier now being right here in Germany. It's my husband is from Rome, so we now, since Corona, we drive there quite frequently, and it's amazing just to drive to Rome and or just go to, I don't know, Salzburg for the day and things like that. So yeah, you're really is amazing. 2, 3, 4 hours and you can be in different countries, and it's just opened up so many opportunities. It's wonderful. It's really accessible and easy to travel around and explore different cultures.
Right. And so what did your family think when you told them,
Mm.
look, I'm moving?
Yeah, they were happy for me. They were like, go for it. It's not that far away. They were
Mhm.
just, I think they were very happy that I'd met someone that I was happy with. When I met him, it was the month before my 41st birthday. So, it was a bit later in life meeting the one. And so I think they were happy that I'd met someone and that he was such a great person and that, yeah, it was time to move on. They had no real qualms about it. I think a lot of my friends were happy for me, but sad that I was going. That was the reaction. But everyone was really happy, and most people were like, "Great, got somewhere to come and visit." So
That's another bonus
people
too
are quite
for others. Make sure
happy.
you get have a big enough place where there's an extra bedroom for me to come visit.
That's right. Yeah, my brother loves his beer, so he was really happy to come here and explore all the thousands of beers that we have. So yeah, I think I'm very close to my friends. Friendships and families are really important to me. Work hard on them. So yeah, it was difficult to leave and it was sad, but it was also people were just really happy for me. And I do feel like with quite a few of my friends, I actually communicate way more now than I did when I lived there.
Mhm.
So certainly like a couple of my friends, we speak or message or WhatsApp or leave a voice message probably every day. So I actually am more in communication than I ever was. And because I do focus on those relationships, I find that now, I think at the beginning, I felt like when I did go back home, it was that very intense. Let's do like a 6 month or a year catch up. Oh, it was a bit much. But now,
Mm.
quite a few of my really close friends, it's just a continuation of the conversations. It's not really like a massive catch up. And that feels really good. So I'm really happy that being able to maintain and, well, not even maintain, but I think even like deepen friendships.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
yeah.
I find that too, that sometimes, like, all friendships are different. And some,
Mhm.
and I left Canada a long time ago, and some friendships just kind of slowly died off. They played their course that they were meant to
Mhm.
be in life. But I still have a few that with my best friends are still very good. We still message and things like that. And thank goodness there is technology to do that. And when I go back, it does seem like there is a bit of a stronger connection and relationship. And it's funny too. I was talking with somebody, I think it was earlier this week or last week. They were on the podcast, and he was had moved far away from his family. And his parents live in one city, and his brothers and sisters live probably about 3 or 4 hours driving
Mhm.
outside. And he said that he probably sees his family flying halfway around the world and spending about a month or so, he says,
Mhm.
visiting each individually because they live all around. But that quality of time, he says, the only time that they're really all together is when he comes, because even his brothers and sister that live 3 hours away don't see his parents a lot more than what
Mhm.
he does. And
Mhm.
so sometimes we think, oh, it's so far, but we have deeper connections, we spend more quality time together, and if we're not really close in physical vicinity of people, we don't realize that we don't really see each other as often as sometimes we think we
Mhm.
do, even if we're living in the same region, province, state, whichever it is where we're at.
Yeah, I felt like in the beginning, I tried to maintain like a lot of relationships. So when I went home, it would be this really intense 2 weeks of visiting absolutely everybody, and all it was going to different houses and talking to people. And I
Mm,
think over time, some of those connections naturally fizzled out. But also, I think that I felt like I changed quite a lot by moving away. It does change you, the experience of living abroad. I had no idea how it would affect me until I did move that because I'd only lived in one country. And I felt with some people like I had moved on and they were kind of still in the same situation or the same kind of position. And I started to feel that with some people that I didn't have the same connection with them. And those looser connections also started to fizzle out. And I think with we had this conversation recently in one of my groups, and I did the simplify your life and looking at relationships and friendships, which are so important indicator of happiness. But actually, I think with like Facebook, that
mhm,
actually we maintain a lot of friendships that would have naturally fizzled out with the distance. And sort of
mhm,
looking at that and deciding, do I hang on to these relationships? Because actually, I don't really have any connection. I don't see them. We don't really communicate, but apart from a couple of likes on a post or something. And so, yeah, I think at this point, I'm kind of reviewing that again. And I'm very much being intentional, as you know, by the title of my book as well. So, I'd rather work on those very close relationships, maintain the ones at home. But you know this as an expat, you're maintaining relationships at home. You're trying to build ones here. My husband is Italian, so we have all these connections in Italy, in Germany, in
mhm.
Scotland, and then I have an 8-year-old who has a bigger social life than anybody, and I spent a lot of time setting all that up as well. So like, it takes a lot of energy to
Mhm.
maintain all those connections. Um, so yeah, I found that some of those naturally just kind of faded. And I think now I feel okay about that. And I
Mhm.
think that's a natural thing as you get older as well, that you don't really need, I don't feel like I need, and I think the research says that you don't really need loads of friends, you just need good quality
Quality.
close friends,
There's
don't you?
I do. And there's a saying, and I'll probably get it a little bit wrong, but it's like when we meet people, there could
Mm,
be tens of thousands of people that we meet throughout our lifetime, and they're friends for a reason. When we're in a certain class, we're working a certain job. We're in, elementary school or different ones, junior high. So
mhm,
we meet so many, or just acquaintances and stuff. And so we meet like thousands of people we meet for a reason. And then maybe there's maybe 100 or a few hundred that we meet for a reason. And it could
mhm,
be something, again, something that we're going through, but it's longer than so sorry, there's the reason first, I believe it is. Then the season is the second because the season is longer. And then very few of those actually last a lifetime.
mhm,
And the
mhm.
lifetime ones we could either even meet later in life, but they're the ones that we really connect to and last. So because if we think about it, we meet thousands of people and we've talked to
Mhm.
and things like that and acquaintances and stuff. Some of them become friends, some of them become good friends. And even for people who have office jobs, how many people stayed connected to those people through the pandemic when they weren't
Mhm.
at the office
Mhm.
anymore?
Mhm.
Those things faded, and because some of
Yeah.
it is that location wise, it's that job wise, and I think part of it is the natural cycle, and it depends on what we do, and definitely moving abroad is going to, I think, speed up those fading away
Mm.
relationships faster than they would have normally faded eventually anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Totally agree. Yeah, I've had that here as well, like having a child here. I had a
Hmm.
whole mums group, and that was really so important to be an expat with a kid and like, just in a different country, and having that mums group was a massive support. But after a while, I felt like I had maintained a couple of really good friendships from it, but the rest, the only thing we had in common was that we had kids at the same time, and so that felt okay to let that go because it served me for a reason then, and that was the purpose, and I'm so thankful for it. But it doesn't mean I have to hang on to every single person from there. I found a couple of people that I really connected with and were really, really good friends. So yeah, I totally agree with you. You're not going to be friends with everybody. I think here as well, one of the challenges of, I can only speak of living in Munich, but one thing is it's a very international community here. It's a
Mhm.
huge international expat community. We have a lot of big companies here. So it's very easy to meet people because it is, a huge thing. It's like 30% is expat, but it's also
Wow.
very, very transient. And so we have a lot of
Mm.
people coming through who are here like on secondment for a couple of years and stuff. And so that was something, because I do love people and I love talking, as you can tell. I love connection. I love meeting people. That's why I love doing like podcasts and stuff. I love the fact that I get to meet you today. I love that. And I found that really challenging in the beginning because I would meet people and I'd be like, oh, I really like you. Like, and then, I'd start to get to know them. They go, oh, I'm leaving. And I'd be like, oh, and, I might not have been really close, but it had the potential to become something. And I found that really hard. And for a long time, I would try and maintain that or try and build that relationship, even when they moved. And now, kind of a bit like, okay. So I do think I do kind of ask people like, are you here short term? Are you like here, as long term as you can predict, and I do tend to pour my energy more into people who seem to be remaining here a bit longer because it took so much energy and it was really hard to put all that energy into getting to know someone and then for them to
Mm.
leave again. So that's something that I definitely have struggled with here and noticed that it's such a transient community that people come and go a lot.
And it's not just there. I lived in Barcelona for years, and Barcelona is extremely transient as well. Some people are there for 6 months, some people are there for years, some people say 3 years, some people aren't sure. And so I get it too, because at first you want to build up these friendships and your acquaintances and your friends, and then they leave, right? And you want to build, or you want to build a closer relationship, but then as soon as oh, they're only here for a year or 3 years, we kind of stop ourselves a little bit because it's like,
Mm,
oh, well, I'll still see you, we'll still hang out, it's great, but I'm kind of putting up a bit of a wall because
yeah.
I don't want to get too close, because I know when you go, then it's just going to be sad. And then I have to go through this over and over and over again.
Mhm.
And that is one of the hardest and kind of the biggest kind of downfalls of the larger cities, where if people are looking to go to with a large expat community, a lot of them are more transient, so it's harder to build those relationships. So for some people, going to a smaller city or a less touristy city would be better, because then there's not as many people coming and going. They're going to stay more long term.
Yeah, I'm glad that it's not just me then that kind of felt that, but I noticed after a while I did kind of have put that sort of wall up and didn't really pour my energy into that because it just felt like, well, you'll go quite soon. And, energy is so precious, time is so precious, isn't it? And so,
Mhm.
yeah, I learned that over the years living here of, yeah, sort of checking that out and how to form friendships here because it's not easy to build a good close relationship, particularly if you've left like long-term relationships behind or, friendships of 25 years, you can't have that when you start somewhere new. And I
Yeah.
think those are the things that, I had some idea of like living abroad and things that I wanted to tackle and how I wanted to approach it when I came. But I think before I moved, I really thought about, oh yeah, and if we went here for a while, that'd be fine. But if the opportunity came to go live somewhere else, I would do that. And now I'm kind of like, oh, I'm quite resistant to that because it takes so much energy to really get to know a city and to feel integrated and to feel at home and to build all those. It takes so much effort. And so I think it would have to be a really good offer to go somewhere. I wouldn't just do it for the sake of just moving around, that was what
Yeah.
I imagined I would be quite open to living anywhere at any time. Oh, that's exciting. But the reality is that it's much harder than you imagine it'll be. Well, for me, anyway, it was much harder.
Yeah, no, and I mean, knowing oneself is the most
Hmm.
important. I move around a lot. This is my fifth country. I'm looking to relocate again. But you're right. I'm looking more to have more of those, a place where I'm really going to enjoy, have roots, community, because those things are important. But I love the fact that I can go to many countries and see people and visit and things
Hmm.
like that as well. So it's a bit of balance, and it is. It's knowing us, knowing what is right for us. Because if moving around is not a good thing for you, then you shouldn't be doing it. It's just that because you're not, somebody's not going to be happy if they really like to have roots, long-term relationships. Sure, you can still move, but you're not going to be wanting to move every 5 years.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, we're here for the long haul at the moment. So let's see.
Yeah, great. Well, so how is life in Germany different from life in Scotland?
Yeah. Um, Even though I moved to another European country, it's definitely different in many ways. Um, I think in terms of, in the very positive sense, it's an extremely good quality of life. I would say life in Scotland is a pretty good standard of living. Um, and I had a good life there. I was extremely fortunate. I worked very hard, but I was always working. I was never unemployed. I've always had a career, bought my own house, had a good life, definitely. But moving here is definitely, and I live in Munich, so Germany is such a big country and it's so different in different regions. So living in
Mm,
Bavaria is very different from, Berlin, etc. But it's definitely an extremely good quality of life. And I think that also makes it hard to think about living somewhere else now that I've lived here, because a lot of things are very good. And I would say even better than being in the UK. So definitely healthcare is phenomenal, and education, infrastructure, safety, green space,
mm,
those kind of things that, well, I think probably for me at this stage of my life, being in my 50s and having a young child, these are the things that become quite important. Might be different if I was in my 20s or 30s. But yeah, in terms of just a quality of life, a standard of living, it's a very, very good place to live. It's extremely good. So, I feel very fortunate to live here, and I really greatly appreciate it. And
mm.
I think some of the things that make it challenging to live here are also what make it so good. So, it's well known for having lots of rules, etc. here. Um, and so that can be quite challenging, but
Hmm.
it's also what makes it such a good place to live. So I definitely feel in terms of like being a woman living abroad, it's very safe here. Having a son is quite different living here than if I was back in Glasgow, which, I would worry for him as he got older going out there. Um, yeah, not to be sort of blasé about it, but I'm not like that. But when I go out, I can go out, I'll go out this evening, I'm going to go out to a concert, I go by myself, I come back late at night, but I'm obviously still have an awareness of what's going on, but I
Of
definitely feel different
course.
from traveling backwards and forwards around Glasgow on my own late at night. So I do definitely, as a woman, feel safer here. I really benefit from the healthcare system here. Yeah, I just think there's lots of great qualities. And like living in Munich, you've got it's bigger than living in a bigger city than Glasgow. It's nothing compared to Rome, which is where my husband comes from, but it's a fairly compact city. But within 30 minutes, you can be out in the countryside, at the lakes. So we have these beautiful natural areas of lakes, mountains, and it's a very outdoorsy place, which I'm not a particularly outdoorsy person, but you can really embrace the mountains for skiing and hiking and the lakes and the nature. It's so green, it's so full of
Oh,
parks. I think it's got like kind of most things that you'd be looking for in a city.
mm.
So I think, yeah, it's a great place to live. I think on the challenging side is probably just like what many people talk about. The culture just feels slightly different in
Mm-hmm.
terms of coming from Scotland, where, well, yeah, I feel like it's a little bit more open and friendlier. Like people talk more to each other. And here people are more reserved. It takes a long time to get to know the local people here, and Germans tend to, as I generalize, but they tend to have their friends from childhood and keep their friends and not really feel the need to add to that. So it can be quite difficult to meet locals, and people are more reserved. So that's the bit I kind of notice, like compared to when I go home and people just chat to you at the bus stop or in the supermarket. And sometimes that sometimes I miss that part. I think that's probably part of what I miss from home. I don't miss too much. I miss the friendliness and the openness and that daily interaction. And I mean it in a sense because, those little interactions every day are so good for our health, aren't they? Those just,
They are.
those little conversations. We noticed that during the pandemic when we didn't have those. Those things are just so important in a day. And I really miss that. And I love when I go home and you just have all these conversations. And I guess for me, the language was quite challenging. I had high hopes that I would become fluent in German, and it's not happened. And sometimes I do feel restricted by that. Where back home, I just feel really capable of asking, calling, doing things. And here I feel a little bit more restricted. So I think that would probably make a difference. But those are the things that I find a little challenging, but overall, I tend to focus on like how many positives are here, and I feel very thankful that I do live here.
Right. No, and those are great. And it's honest and it's your experience and how you feel. And there is no perfect place.
Yeah.
I've been looking. I've been to many countries, and I'm still looking. And I do every place has positives and negatives, and the negatives don't have to be horribly bad. They're just things that sometimes it's just like little things that we miss. That's a negative. Like one I can say with living in Barcelona, coming from first Canada, then Costa Rica, the lack of green space. Like they
Mm-hmm.
say that there's lots of parks, but there's not a lot of grass parks. Like they're dirt ground. Yeah, they have some trees, but it really, to me, there's such a lack of actual
Mm-hmm.
green grass spaces that I really miss when I'm in Barcelona. Um, I'm just so used to it in other places, especially when I go back to Canada. It's there. So there's little things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, I didn't realize I missed it for a long time. I was gone for years, and all of a sudden, and I might have been traveling in Ireland at the time or something, and all of a sudden, like, well, what's that smell? Oh my gosh, it's amazing. And I realized it was the smell of fresh cut grass, which
Mm-hmm.
most people think that sounds crazy. But
No.
to me, growing up in Canada, it's springtime, it's summertime. You smell it, but you don't really realize because you smell it so often. When you don't smell it for years, and then all of a sudden it was just, and I really notice it now, anytime, whether it is if I go back to Canada or if I'm somewhere, the odd park in Barcelona, or I was just here in Montenegro and they were cutting grass just the other day, and I was like, I just wanted to stand there for a minute and just smell that because it's just
Yeah.
one of those, it's the little things
Mm-hmm.
sometimes
Mm-hmm.
that that we miss. So
Yeah,
I
no,
can
absolutely. I mean,
understand.
I also like the fact that the weather is slightly better than Scotland. So I was never an outdoor person because I just never embraced Scottish weather. And, I went home
Mhm.
for a visit in June, and it was so cold and it just rained the whole week I was there. Whereas here, I was just saying, before we started recording that, I was like, it was so hot a couple of days ago here, still in October. And so you feel that you can go out a bit more. We have all these beautiful beer gardens. You can sit outside, you can be in the parks. And I'm looking out my window right here, and I have lots of big trees, and literally it's 30 seconds. There's a park right here. I can see it. Yet I'm 7 minutes from the city centre by underground. So, it's you can easily still be right very close to the centre, but live in a very what feels like a very urban environment, suburban environment, and a lot of greenery and a lot of green space. So it's really easy to access and just
Mm.
be outdoors. It's a lot easier to be outdoors here. I do enjoy it very much.
Yeah, it's for me too. It's one of the benefits of all the places that I pick to live. I'm
Mm,
usually so far it's been within about 10-ish minutes to the sea. Costa Rica was the furthest. I think that was probably a 10-minute drive. The other Barcelona and Montenegro, I'm a 10-minute walk and I'm at the
mm,
water. But I'm also, not far from the city center and even the areas where I do live. There's tons of restaurants, the shopping, everything is almost at my doorstep.
mm,
And so there's nice things like that because I do love the outdoors. And one of the things I hate about Canada is winter, and it's
mm.
there for a long time.
And it's cold. It's really
It's
cold.
cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's to me it's the biggest negative of it is winter, and I absolutely hate it. So part of a big portion of the reason for me leaving was the weather.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too.
And
Me too.
so, so for some listeners, if it's the weather, I get it. If that's the only thing you dislike, I get it. Mine was weather, and I was ready for a change. I knew my whole life I wasn't going to live in Canada forever.
Okay. Good.
Um,
Yeah.
but and I just love Europe. I really do. It's a great place to be. And it's just finding people's experiences, and so for those people who are a little unsure about, kind of taking that leap or taking that step and moving, hopefully this helps them make that
Mm,
that decision.
definitely.
So back to life in Germany, how do you feel like the cost of living is there,
Mm,
compared to maybe even compared to when you go and visit in Rome, visiting your husband's family, or when you go back to
mm,
Scotland? Are they all
mm.
pretty similar? Are there some big differences?
No, it's expensive to live here. It's very expensive. Tax is really high and you pay for a lot. I would say you pay a lot of money in taxes and but I do feel you see what you get for your money, if that makes sense. So I felt like when I
Yeah.
lived in Scotland, I
Hmm.
paid a lot of tax, but there was potholes everywhere and the rubbish didn't get picked up and those things. Whereas here, you see what you get for it. And I feel like, there's not a bit of rubbish lying around. The infrastructure is phenomenal, and you pay for healthcare here. That's a big change. So very much about the NHS that we have is phenomenal, but it's really under crisis. And I know that when I moved here, it was quite a shock to have to pay for my healthcare, but what I get in return is like being a private patient back home. So, I've had so much access to treatment that I never had back home.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it's I feel, this is probably one of the number one reasons that I live here is that it's just, so good. Like, I mean, like anywhere there's pros and cons of healthcare, but, I think
Of
from what
course.
I've certainly accessed a lot more than I ever did back home and had like a number of like small things and larger things dealt with that would not have been dealt with or weren't dealt with back home. So you definitely pay a lot more. Housing is one of the biggest issues. So growing up in the UK, you buy a house, that's more common. And so, I've always owned a house since I could go out and get a mortgage. And here it's difficult to buy a house because it's so expensive. So I don't live in a very big house. I live in a very, very small apartment and we rent it. And so that's quite different for me. And to buy even a tiny apartment is so expensive. I don't even think I'll ever be able to buy a house here. And I would quite like to be able to own my own house. So housing is very difficult to even rent. That's really hard. And to able to afford somewhere is extremely difficult. Um, those are the big ones
That
that
it seems to be a problem everywhere right
mhm,
now in the world. Like people that I talk to in different countries, whether it's um, recently in France, Istanbul, Portugal. Like those are just a few people I've spoken to just today. And all of them, it's the same thing, housing, the cost of housing everywhere, which kind of
Mhm.
makes me wonder how, like, it can't go on forever. Like
Mhm.
housing bubbles have happened in the past. How long will it go? But I just I don't believe that the way the prices are going and everything, like it just can't be maintained forever.
Mhm.
Like they're
Mhm.
unfortunately, unfortunate for some, fortunate for others,
Mhm.
depending on
Mhm.
which side. Like
Yeah.
something's gonna have to give because I just, I see it being very similar to what we saw in 2008. Now, will it be the same? Obviously, the causes of it are going to be different, but it was the same thing 2008. And then one time, I think even before that, that I recall, I don't remember the year, but I was like, that, like it just can't continue to be going
Mhm.
the way it's going. Like
Mhm.
so we'll see, but that is
Yeah. We'll
definitely an
see.
issue everywhere.
Yeah, but it Munich is a very rich city. There's a lot of
Hmm.
money and a lot of um very well off people here. So, there's
Hmm.
a lot of inherited wealth as well, and the people have lovely big homes here. But, if you want to get a very small 2 or 3 bedroom house here, you're well over €1 million to get a house. So
Wow,
it's,
that's
it's
crazy.
a lot. It is a lot. And
Mm.
that's most people are priced out of that. So that's something compared to like obviously being a homeowner back home working for a nonprofit. I was able to buy a house. So, like it's quite different that way. Um,
Right.
so yeah, I would say in terms of cost of living, it's pretty high. But
Mm.
it's what you do in order to get all the other benefits of living here. So,
Mhm.
um, but yeah, it is expensive. You do have to work to live here.
Right. Well, as they say, or as I always say, like there's pros and cons to everything, or there's
Mhm.
trade-offs.
Yeah,
It's very few people can just have it all. And even if you are making millions of dollars a year,
yeah,
millions of euros, there's still a trade-off of somewhere.
yeah.
And we just have to know what we want. I say to people like, what do you really want? What are kind of those non-negotiables, and be realistic about them. And then what are those things that are negotiable? And then working within that,
Hmm. Hmm.
there's places to find, and we just have to know ourselves, know what's important to us, and
Yeah,
then go from there and make decisions from there.
yeah. I think we have made choices to trade on different things here, so we perhaps don't work as hard as we could,
Hmm.
or work as long hours. Bavaria is great for working hours. People do finish at 5 and 6 o'clock, and everything's closed on a Sunday and things like that. So there's a family time is very protected. So that is
Mm.
if you have a Bavarian contract here, then that's something that's fantastic. And so we really, we're an Italian Scottish family. It's very much about being together as a family. So we'd rather have perhaps less money and more time and to have more experiences and things. So we chose to live in a small apartment but in a nice area and to go out and have experiences than to buy stuff. So that's what we've kind of traded. That's what's important to us. And so yeah, it works. It works fairly well.
Mhm. No,
Yeah.
I think that's great. And well, we know that stuff doesn't make us happy anyway. It's always experiences,
Mm.
and we can never get more time. Whatever our amount of time is, like even with your son as he grows up, like he's only going to be 8 for 1 year. You're not going to get
Oh,
8 again. You're not going to get
absolutely. It's
9
going so
again.
fast.
And so that is
Yeah,
the most
exactly.
important. And at some point he's going to be gone. He's going to move out, go to college, or whatever his journey and plan is going to be. So
Yeah, yeah.
so once you moved there, did you start your business right away, or did you look for some work, or how did you get
Mhm.
into doing what you do now? Because you were in nonprofit when you were
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Scotland, and then how did that part of the transition happen?
So that part is really good. Yeah, I worked in nonprofit for over 20 years, and I worked in mental health, and for a long time, that was like so fulfilling for me. But I think after a while, I got really burnt out by it all and working for a nonprofit as well, because, it's just always about being underpaid and overworked and all the politics and the money and all these things. It was just hard. And I did it for over 20 years and working, with people. And it was a lot. I always had a dream of working for myself, but I think if I had stayed in Scotland, I don't know that that would have happened. But moving here, what I didn't really translate because there's not really the nonprofit system here in Germany. We don't really have that so much. And the language as well was an issue. And there's quite an issue as well in terms of a lot of qualifications are not recognized here. So people really struggle. That's a huge issue for many people here to continue working in their field because it's not recognized. So I was clear from moving that I was going to transition into coaching. The work I had been doing in the nonprofit was really going into people's homes and working with them. And I was always asking people, what are you looking for? What's recovery for you? We had a really sort of recovery approach. And people kept saying to me, I just want to be happy. And that's why my focus is on happiness, because people kept saying, I just want to be happy. And I'm like, well, what is this? What is this happiness? And
What
how are we
is
going to get
happy?
it?
Yeah. Or
And
what is
that's
it
what
for
really set me
you?
off. Yeah. And what we really figured out was that it was really simple things. People wanted peace of mind, they wanted some purpose, they wanted connection. And so I would set goals and break them down and help people step by step do that and change their lives that way, and had amazing success. That's coaching. It just wasn't called that. And so when I thought about moving here and what I could do, it just seemed such a natural continuation. I had the psychology background. I had over 20 years in mental health, and that was just incredible lived experience and professional experience there. It was just so natural to move into coaching. And so I came with a really clear plan about how I would transition into living here. The coach in me was really strong because I'd come and visited a lot, but I was really clear that I didn't want to just come here and, my husband had been here for a couple of years, so he had a good community, and I could easily have just sort of tagged along with him, but I was really clear that I needed to find my own network, set up my own business, do all of those things. So I came with a really clear plan. I wanted to learn German. I wanted to set up my own business. I wanted to create my own network. I also wanted to see if I could get pregnant, because by this point, I'm 42 years old. So I was like, I need to see if this is going to happen. I met him later in life. And so that's what I came, and I was very focused. I signed up immediately for German classes. I did a coaching qualification. I really worked on my health. I went out and really pushed myself to go out and go around on meetup and internations and go into strange bars and navigate everything in German and just walk into places and meet people. And actually what I ended up doing was setting up my own groups. And so I still had, that's where the happiness club comes from. I wanted to find something that I like to do, which was sitting around talking and drinking and eating. So I set up the happiness club, which has been going for 9 years. So it's amazing. And now it's online and it's international. Everyone from around the world joins. So it's amazing. But that's where that kind of stemmed from. And so when I moved, I immediately started studying to have a coaching qualification. And in the August of that, so I moved in January 2014. I'd studied my qualification, which I got in the September. By the August, I was pregnant. And so I set up my business pretty much when I was 6 months pregnant. So that's how I did it. I worked, and I started getting clients, and I basically worked up to messaging people on the day of giving birth, like I need to cancel. Sorry, I'm about to give birth.
I'm in labor.
Yes. And then went back very soon afterwards. That was one thing that I struggled with, because I'd worked for years and paid into the system, that I felt I missed out on that maternity leave and maternity pay, which I'd worked for years and covered everyone else's and paid into system. And therefore that was one thing where I didn't have that, what felt like more like a luxury, or it's not even a luxury, to have a year or two off and just focus on my child. here I was self-employed and I had to go back to work. So that was something I really struggled with. On the other hand, I think it was good for me to have something that was for my own identity and as a person.
Right.
So yeah, I basically started setting up my business when I was 6 months pregnant, and that's what I do. And with the I worked a lot here in Munich, but also I worked online around the world. And then with the pandemic, everything just moved online, which was fine. And now
Right.
I only coach online because a lot of my clients are a lot of Canadians, a lot of Americans, all around the world. And I love that I can one moment be in Nova Scotia and then in Washington, D.C., and then in Dubai and then in India. And it's just, I love that I can just connect with all these incredible people around the world and work with them. So yeah, my business has kind of evolved over the years. And also I wanted something that would give me a bit more work-life balance, because being an expat, I have no family here. We have nobody here, and having a child is quite challenging. One of the things about the German school system is that it's well, yeah, it needs to really be overhauled, but kids finish around 11:30 in the morning, which makes it
What?
rather difficult. Yes, I'm not kidding you. Yes.
What
Yes,
time do they
you heard
start?
me correct. Yes, you heard. We
What
start
time
at
do they?
8 o'clock in the morning, and they mostly come home between 11:30 and 12. So to be
They
able
have
to,
4 hours of school?
Mhm, mhm. And then mostly you try and find an after school program to put them in while you're at work. So two things that I did was, one, that I
That's
could then
incredible. I
work.
had no idea. That just like, I can't even
Yeah,
believe that.
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. It's very. I think
And
it's
they're so
still.
efficient though. I mean, like they get like if Germany's known to be very efficient. So to me it seems very strange that the school hours are so short for being very kind of rulesy and efficient country.
Yeah, but I think it's also a very um strong Catholic and very traditional area still. The church is still very dominant.
Okay.
And I do
Mm-hmm.
feel that women are still meant to be at home waiting for their kids. They are
Mm-hmm.
looking at overhauling it. So that was one thing, was I needed flexibility to take care of my child. Two, what
Mm-hmm.
we did make a decision was to actually put him into all-day private bilingual school, because we wanted to really promote languages. So that's, he's in an all-day school now. But I really wanted that ability to balance my work and also having my son. So it means that
Mm-hmm.
I can choose my hours and I can work around him and also be
Mm.
present for him. So I'm really happy that I could set up, yeah, my own business and work for myself. I really love working for myself. I can't imagine going back to working for
Going
someone
back to
else.
that. Mm-hmm. And
So
is it difficult to set up a company in Germany, or is it quite easy?
I found it fairly straightforward. It's there's
Okay.
a lot of support to set up a business here.
Yeah.
And I mean, my kind of business, there's not a
Mm-hmm.
lot of setup, because, just have my laptop and go for it. So it's quite good. And also many people do, because it's quite difficult to bring your qualifications with you. Yeah, that's a big
Right.
reason that people struggle to work. There's a lot of people that move with their partners because they come for business. So there's definitely a huge percentage of women set up their own businesses. So there's a huge network of women entrepreneurs in Munich. So it's quite common, and most, I think, virtually all of my friends here are self-employed. So that's a big part. So there's this sort of navigating those things in German, dealing with tax in your own language is hard enough, never mind in German. Some words are actually a whole line long. I actually counted once, there was 37 letters in one word. Even Google was like, I
Oh
don't know
my
what this is.
gosh. I
So there's
wouldn't
some
even.
challenges that way of navigating sort of legal things and tax and stuff. But overall, it's fairly easy to set
Hmm.
up and run a
Oh,
business
good.
here. So yeah, I'm really happy that I've done that, and
That's great.
I love
Great.
what I
Well,
do.
if people wanted to work with you
Mhm.
or join your Women's Happiness Club, what's
Yeah.
the best ways for the listeners to connect?
Yeah, of course. Like have a website, julieleonardcoaching.com. You can find out the different courses and group programs as well as one-on-one. And I also have a Facebook group called the Happiness Club VIP. So that's a big, we've got well over, I don't know, 1,500 women on there, a lovely big community. And that's where you can find all the stuff that I do, including a weekly free happiness club that you can come and join and learn all about how to be happier in your life. It's all based on science and research, and we bring lots of lovely, like-minded women from all around the world. And you realize that no matter where you live, we all have the same issues. It's the same stuff.
It really is.
Yeah.
It is. Well, thank you, Julie, very much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I know the listeners got a lot of valuable information.
Thank you so much.